She has worked on Hollywood blockbusters such as Planet of the Apes, Mission Impossible, Men in Black, Pirates of the Caribbean, Avengers, and many more. And her desire is to work on more faith-based projects. Today we talk with Emmy Award-winning Christian makeup artist, Deborah Rutherford. But first, if you're finding this podcast helpful, take a moment to follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you think others would be interested in listening, please rate and review to make it easier for others to find. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or podchaser.com.
This is the Faith and Family Filmmakers Podcast, helping filmmakers who share a Christian worldview stay in touch, informed, and inspired. Quiet on set. Rolling. Your hosts, Geoffrey and Jaclyn Whitt.
Welcome to the Faith and Family Filmmakers Podcast. My name is Jaclyn.
And I'm Jeff.
Today we have a makeup artist here with us. Deborah Rutherford is a Christian writer, poet, podcaster, Emmy recipient makeup artist. She founded the Behold Her beauty blog and podcast at www.debrarutherford.com. Although raised in California, she and her husband Don now call Georgia home. She enjoys a good cup of tea while journaling and studying the Bible. And as a beauty and wonder seeker, she finds her soul rest on nature walks. She has been published online at Gracefully Truthful Ministries, Aletheia Today, guest blogs, and has a devotion in the anthology The Lord is My Shepherd, published by Arabelle Publishing and the Kala Press Literary Journal, Spring 2023. Welcome to Faith and Family Filmmakers Podcast, Deborah.
Hi, Jaclyn, Jeff. Thanks for having me on today.
Good to have you.
It's great to have you. Actually, I'm really excited to get to know you because we actually haven't met yet. But when I found that there was a makeup artist that is Christian, I thought you would be perfect for the show because most of the people I have contacts with are writers or actors or producers. But we really want to include everybody that's involved in the film industry, and clearly makeup is part of that. So tell me, how did you get started? Like, where did that even come from?
Well, I've always been a creative type of person. I went to theater art at Loyola Marymount University. Before that, Cal Poly Pomona. Before that, Citrus College. But I have my degree from Loyola. Got out of school and I did not go in that direction. I went into music, and after many years in that, I had met my husband and we were basically looking for a way to make a living. And he knew about being a makeup artist. Most people think that it's me that got us into it because he does it with me, but it was him. And I have to always tell people, no, it was him because he grew up on the, like the horror movies of the 1980s, you know, the Dawn of the Dead and all of that. And there was a very well-known makeup artist. His name is Dick Smith, and he has since passed. But he's the one who came up with basically the special makeup or makeup effects that we kind of use today. He was kind of that trailblazer. And so he was influenced by those movies too. And then with that time, we were living in Burbank, California. And we were going to a store called Creature Features, and everybody in the industry would go there at lunchtime. You know, the people from Universal, the people from Warner, and you'd look at these. Basically, there were like these build-up model kits of every movie you've ever seen. And so we just started getting to know people in the industry. And then when I decided to go to makeup school, my husband this time now is painting little model build-up kits for that store. And the owner, Taylor White, knew Dick Smith. And so he gave me his number to call him to say, I want to become a makeup artist. And he just listened to me for a little bit. And he was, now some people think this isn't a kind thing to say, but it was a kind thing. He said, because he offered a course, but it was very advanced. He says, I'm not going to take your money. You're green. You're older for getting into it. At that time, I was 34 years old.
Right.
He said, you're a woman. He goes, it's going to be really hard for you, but you can do it if you really work at it and you really want to. And then he gave me a list of books to buy, said, get a camera and practice for 3 months and then call me, or go to makeup school. So he recommended at the time Westmore Academy. And I did have the money to go. And so I went. And when I met the director of Westmore Academy, she said that makeup was living art. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. Like coming from theater and then coming from arts and craft, I was like, I could do that, like living art, you know? But it was one of those turning points in our life where I really felt this is something I can do kind of naturally. I mean, I had to work really hard at it, of course. And I didn't tell anybody my age probably for a while until somebody in one of the shops made a joke about a reference about, what was his name? It was a comedian. And I knew who the comedian was. And he's like, I know how old you are.
Yeah. You dated yourself.
And mind you, I'm only like 36 at the time, but that's the pressure you can have in that industry when you have people that start right out of high school or whatever. But also at the same time, there's people from all walks of life in there. And so it's just, if it's something you want to do, then you can work hard to do it.
I like what you said when you were kind of prefacing, like, people say this is unkind, but actually it was. And he basically told you, you're not ready. But he didn't leave it at that. He said, here's what you need to do. And then you decided whether you wanted to do the work or not. And I think that sometimes people might get offended by being told they're not ready. But what they're not hearing is that just because you're not ready doesn't mean you're not able. It just means that there's still work to do. And so I love your story that you took that and you went and you did the work and then you succeeded. You ended up becoming ready. And that's a powerful story.
So did you call him back and get in his class?
I did get to take his course later, yes. I ended up, it's just such a turn of events of one of his proteges. I ended up working in his makeup lab right out of school. And so now he's calling on the telephone. I'm like, oh my goodness. So it's just an interesting world that we live in, I think I'm in 29 years. So it's been ebbs and flows. A big part for me has been halfway through is when I came back to Christ. So the first part, I'm living secular, prodigal. Then the second part, I'm now saved, but I'm still working in, I guess I call it secular film, the regular film industry. And so that was the big turning point in my career. But also at that time, we moved out to Georgia from Los Angeles, which my husband's family is in Knoxville, Tennessee. So we wanted to be closer to them. But also we had been brought out here to work. We were brought out to work on the Hunger Games movies. And we were like, this is so nice out here. You can drive around to all these neat places and we can go see the family and Florida's right there. And so when it became apparent that this is what we felt God was calling us to, we moved out here.
Well, there should be no shortage of opportunities to work in film in Georgia.
The thing about the film industry is, I guess a lot of people say it's like California real estate or Los Angeles real estate. It's volatile. It changes all the time. If it's something that God wants me to be involved in, He will keep me in it. In the beginning, there was a moment where I was like, okay, I'm saved now. When do I get to leave? When do I get to do some kingdom building work? And what I came to realize is that being there was part of that. That was my kingdom building, because not only do I sometimes have opportunities to share Christ with people, but I have lots of opportunities to work out a lot of the things that I'm still working out on my walk, especially with some of the old habit, old clothes, ambition, striving, that can get caught up in that again, because it is a very competitive environment. But then one thing I also found out, because then there was a point where we thought, well, if we stay and we want to do faith-based films, right? But what I found out is they draw from the same crew. There's no, this is your Christian crew, this is your Jewish crew, this is your non-religious crew. They're all from the same pool of professionals and craftsmen, which is one hand is really wonderful because you're working together in that sense, right? And
it's nice to work with like-minded people.
Yeah, like in that sense. And so we have done one faith movie. It's called Southern Gospel. we just finally watched it the other night, and it really did come out really a sweet movie. It's really nice. I highly recommend it. And then we were up for another one, and we didn't get it, but the makeup team that got it weren't Christians. But I thought, well, maybe that's God's plan. They need to be there,
Mhm.
and I need to be over on Marvel, like maybe
Right.
that's
Yeah.
part of the plan. And then what helped me a lot too was that, if you join the army, you don't get to pick where you're stationed,
Mm. Yeah, that's a good
and
point.
so God will station us where He wants to station us. And so I've made peace with that, but a lot of it was exploring through writing about faith and beauty and what it all means.
Hmm. You mentioned that like you started your career and then like halfway through you found Christ. So you were still living in California at the time?
Well, we were living in California and we're working on big films, made a lot of money, but then started feeling empty. And so started doing meditating and little new age, trying to find some spirituality. And I was raised Catholic and I was trying to find just some spirituality. And then I went on a movie job to Budapest. And my husband and I were Skyping and he put a Bible up on the screen and said, I'm reading the Bible. And I was like, oh, I want to read it too, you know. And so he said, well, you're in a hotel, look in the drawer. So that evening when we got off the phone, I was reading Matthew and I started reading the healings. And it just so came back to me like if I could say I had the Holy Spirit swishing to me moment, that was definitely it. And what really struck me was that I had forgotten. I'd forgotten that He was a healer and most importantly, that He could heal me now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was
That's
crazy
beautiful.
the next day. I went to work. Hungarians are Christian country, Catholic, Christian, and they didn't think I was crazy. But I'm running up to crew members going, did you know Jesus was a healer? I forgot. Did you know? And
Like the woman at the well,
and my
just so excited to share.
yes, exactly. And in my makeup trailer, there were only a few of us from the USA, and I think some other people from England, but most everybody else was Hungarian. And it was for the film In the Land of Blood and Honey with Angelina Jolie. And so I'm in the makeup trailer telling every single person in there, did you know Jesus was a healer? I couldn't believe I forgot. And they just kind of looked at me like I was a little loony. They're like, okay, calm down, Deborah. I said, shh. And but the Hungarians are just smiling at me going, yeah, we know. And what is so wonderful about that is that my close friend from that period, who was also a prodigal going forward, that she would come back to Christ too. So it was just a really wonderful moment in time where you saw God work across the world, basically, California, Budapest.
That's amazing. I can just imagine you've got people sitting in your chair and it's like maybe they're there for an hour and they don't know what they've gotten themselves into. You're just going to share the gospel.
Well, and that's like new faith, and that kind of made me think that maybe God brings people to faith at different times in their lives and different places with different experiences because you need that person who's so excited because you so clearly can see that line at that point, like what was before and what is now. You see that. It's so clear. And not that you forget that ever, but it can become, well, we'll just watch that or we'll just do that.
Right. Compromises.
Yeah,
Right,
compromises. Yeah.
In the beginning when it's so fresh and you're so excited and you're just pressing in from all directions in your faith. And then I guess, there can come a point where you get very comfortable in it, that you start to relax. And so then that pressing in relaxes. And then that's where compromise can creep in.
When you may not know it so much. For example, going back to work then as a Christian, there were often times where the content was like, whoa, this is not good, And it was kind of learning how to deal with that in a sense. I mean, there have been times where there was one show where the scene was to mock Christ, really. I mean, they had a character, but really it was a demon playing him. And my husband was like, Nope, absolutely, we're not involved. We will not be in the trailer. When the character's in there, we will not be on set. We don't want to have nothing to do with this. And you know what? The production was like, okay, not a word about it. It was a Warner Brothers production. They respected our position. There was
That's
somebody
great.
else. Yeah, somebody else could cover it. So I think a lot of it's just knowing what's acceptable. And it's not just as a Christian. There was one scene once where a girl was being raped, and one of the actresses, no, it was a makeup artist, had happened to them before. So they didn't want anything to do with it. So it's sometimes in the content, if it's going to be offensive or triggering to somebody, you have every right to say, I'm sorry, without losing your job.
Right. Yeah.
I can't be a part of
should
that.
be a thing.
Yeah.
Part of it, because that line's going to be different for everybody,
Mhm.
but part of it is actually intentionally setting that line, because if you don't have it, then you have no boundaries. And so how do you know when they're being crossed, or how do you know when you need to stand up for yourself? And so I like that you and your husband, you have the communication and the relationship where you guys can support each other and say, nope, that's beyond what we are willing to participate in. And so this is where our boundary is. I'm happy for you that you had a good experience where you were respected in that decision, and that it wasn't something where you had to choose your job or your boundary.
When I've seen some of the younger people not know that they have that right,
Mhm.
and then go along with things. I remember one time, that's a little bit different, but not really. A PA was asked to go into, was it the Salton Sea, which is completely toxic. And everyone's like, you don't have to do it, because the actor refused to go in there. It was like a lower budget movie. And he's like, oh no, I have to go in. They'll fire me or whatever. And so he went in and they got sick,
Aw.
not permanently sick, I don't think, but
Yeah.
it's like
But
he didn't know that
still.
he could say, nope.
Right. Most job sites, there are protocols to keep people from getting sick, right? Or injuring themselves. And
There are, and you just have to, be stern about it, because you can be on the biggest film ever and somebody will try to burn something they shouldn't, or, use a product they shouldn't, until somebody says something about it. And then they'll be, oh, sorry.
right. So, okay, going back to your journey, I want to ask, was there a particular project where you felt like, okay, I'm in, where you felt like your career was, I guess, like on a new trajectory where, it wasn't just kind of like little things here and there, but you were like, okay, I'm in. This is the project.
Well, I have been working on, it was a show called Good versus Evil. It was a USA Today television show out in Los Angeles. And it was one of the first lower budget shows that the union organized. So although it was union, it was probably like $16 an hour. I mean, it was like, but I was so happy, because I was working and I didn't have any money anyway. So that was a lot to me. I was like, that's great. But a gentleman named Rick Baker, who was also protege of Dick Smith, his resume is just amazing. But he was doing The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. And it was a bigger show than he usually did at that point. And so he needed to meet makeup artists. So he held auditions for makeup artists.
Oh, interesting.
But you had to go in and apply the makeup at your audition. And so the department head, Tony G, she had met me briefly, like at a party or whatever. And she asked, at that lab that I had been working at for the gentleman, she asked him if she should test me. And he said, well, she did a great Dorothy makeup. I did a Dorothy makeup on a Wizard of Oz tribute. But I don't know if she can do a prosthetic makeup, but you can try her. And so they scheduled me. So I'm working on this other show, the low budget show. And at lunchtime, I'm grabbing everybody I can to come into the trailer so I can practice on them. And I have another wonderful, the Kenny and Karen Myers, who are giving me pieces to use. So basically was gluing a nose on. And so then I had my audition. And part of a good makeup as an actor that can sell it, especially a special effects makeup. And I got really lucky. I got a guy that was just selling it. And the guy makeups were, I would say, easier than the female ones. I just felt it was. And so anyway, you were asking when there was that moment. So I'm in a parking lot at nighttime, downtown LA filming. It smells terrible. And then all of a sudden, my husband calls. He goes, you got a part.
And the Grinch?
Yeah, and I got hired on that. And mind you, I'd been only doing it 3 years, so I was just like so green and so excited.
Mm-hmm.
And my biggest stumbling block, no, I don't know if it's called stumbling block, my biggest thing at that point was I had to be careful to not let people think that I knew more than I did.
Right.
Even though I didn't tell people how old I was, just because I had life experience, I came off looking like I knew more than I
Right.
did, you know.
Right.
In some areas, I could do that, like if it was the coordinating or the scheduling or that part of the makeup. The actual clocking in the hours of touching somebody's face and putting makeup on them, that you can't cheat that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like,
Mm-hmm.
that's clocking in the hours, just, you know, over and over and over, just like anything else that you would be good at, you know. And so that's sort of entered into a whole another level of amazing makeup artists. And that led to Planet of the Apes, where I assisted the department head, Tony G, with Helena Bonham Carter makeup. And then after that, Pirates of the Caribbean movies came. Mind you, though, those like working on big crews. So to keep humble, even though I wasn't following God at the time, he was pursuing me,
Working
right?
on you. Yeah.
And so to keep me humble, Planet of the Apes, huge movie. I'm in the main trailer. I think I'm something, right? And so right afterwards, friend says, "Oh, you should do this independent film." So go to do this independent film. Now I'm in the desert in Lancaster, and it's the trailer that's like the worst thing you've ever seen, and hardly anybody can fit in it. Like, so we're like bumping up against each other. And I mean, it was like a little tiny honey wagon, basically. At first, you know, we were like, "Ew," but a couple of days later, while the rest of the crew is out there in the desert, heat, sweating it, that little tiny trailer just became an oasis. So it's perspective, and
Right.
it's important to always remember that. And that's why I talked about the ebb and flow.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to look forward to talking with you more in the members only portion of our interview. But before we finish out this one, I just want to ask if you have any final thoughts for our listeners.
As I've been doing makeup, I've also always been a writer. So I have been working on a book about beauty and faith, and really asking God, saying, do the two go together? What does it have to do with each other? Kind of just really, why am I doing the work that I'm doing? Introspection. And it's really led me to exploring the inside beauty, and that brings out the outside beauty. And how there was a woman that sat in my chair. This is, I think, the year before last. And she was probably 45, very pretty, but she was like, "Do you got something for this under eye area?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're beautiful. You're gorgeous." And she's looking at kind of the younger people. And I just said, "You're radiating, you know, and it's about exercising, eating right, your spirituality." And then she said, "Oh, I have that. I'm a Christian." And that was like, we were able to just really connect there. And she no longer was worried about her under eye area, which there wasn't really anything to worry about. But you know what I mean? We can get so caught up on our outside that we can forget what's inside.
Right. Yes. This face is not my identity. It's how people identify that it's me, but I am more than my face, because if my face got damaged, I'm still me.
Exactly.
You know, I would have to grieve the injury or whatever it was that happened, but at the same time, like, I still am me.
Absolutely.
So identity, needs to be grounded in Christ for sure.
Before we finish up this portion of our interview, I'd like to invite you to go deeper in our discussion with Deborah Rutherford in Part 2, our exclusive members episode. What are 3 things a makeup artist should look at if they're wanting more work? Deborah shares some tips for aspiring makeup artists. She also talks about the importance of being versatile, the show that won her an Emmy Award, and her strong desire to work on projects with hope and redemption. You can hear Deborah's bonus episode and our complete catalog of exclusive episodes by becoming a supporting member. $5 a month helps support the production of this podcast and doubles the inspiring content you receive every week. Sign up now and get the first month free. You can find the link in the show notes or simply go to faffpodcast.com/support.
Yes. And I think as a Christian makeup artist that can be even without saying that to people when you're working with them. It's a nurturing activity, I think, kind of a service, nurturing.
And is your book available?
No, not yet. I'm writing it right now. And
Okay.
it's in the stage where I have someone that I'm going to meet with to look at it, read it, and make sure that it's sound, and then pitch it to publishers and sort of that thing. But in the meantime, I do have a blog and a podcast called Beholder Beauty. We talk about this kind of conversations, kind of intimate, kind of candid. And it's with just different women where we talk about the different areas in life that look at your beauty from, like this episode that just came out is The Beauty of a Fruitful Life. And it's with an author who she wrote a book about the fruit of the spirit and how we can get rid of barriers that can keep us from living a fruitful life. And so it's sort of that sort of theme, like how do we live out in our day-to-day lives the beauty of Christ rather than the beauty of the world.
That's beautiful. Okay, good. Well, I hope people will go and check it out, and we'll have the links in the show notes for that. Debra, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and your insights. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
And we look forward to talking with you more.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast. If you would like email reminders about newly released episodes and more, please sign up at faffpodcast.com/email. That's faffpodcast.com/email. Bringing filmmakers together for faith and family.
That's a wrap.